Forgot to push the big red button.
Well, it's hard to find the big red button.
This feels like innuendo or something, but it's not. I literally am struggling to find the record button, which says nothing about me in any other facet of my life.
I think it could be analogous to literally any other aspect of your life.
Honestly, probably.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into Neverlag. We're back for, let me get my head on straight here. We're back for December, about November. As prophesied, as foretold. I'm one of your hosts, Levi, joined by the man who fell in the pit. Across from me, Zach. How you doing?
I'm pretty good. A little bit under the weather, but getting better. And playing a lot of video games lately, somehow. I feel like my life has gotten really busy. And somehow I've been playing a lot of video games. I don't know what that says about my priorities or any interpersonal relationships, but what it does say is that we'll have things to talk about today. So
you know what they say: if you want to get some games played, give it to someone who's busy.
That's right. There's a reason that saying has been uttered for over a century. How are you doing?
Well, doing good. Hopefully this podcast will cure what ails you. Today, hopefully talking for 2 hours will.
That should help.
Help.
It's just what the doctor prescribed.
Exactly, a podcast a day. So yeah, thank you for joining us. We are we're a little bit into December at this point, but we're going to go back. We're going to take our time machine back to November. Just talk a little bit about what happened, what we played. Sounds like we have a few things to talk about for November. So, I mean, not the least of which that we don't have time to talk about. November was a good month because we got to see the end of Arcane. So that probably took an entire game off my list.
Probably. That deserves its own episode. We'll do that in a little bit.
I know, huh? I'll have to talk about it. All right. How do you want to? Oh, so I know that spoilers. I know that Little Nightmares are on this list. Probably both of them, right?
Yep, and the DLC. So all of Little Nightmares.
Do you want to just abbreviate Little Nightmares 2 or save it for December? Because I'm in the middle of it right now.
We'll just save Little Nightmares 2. Yeah, we can just save that for December. That's fine.
You can give a quick thought of it or whatever at the end of.
Yeah.
Do you want to start with Little Nightmares then?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think you played the first Little Nightmares before me and encouraged me to play it. And then I played it.
Yeah, Little Nightmares was it was one of my backlog games forever. I think I bought it on the Switch originally, years and years ago, and booted it up and was so appalled by how it looked on the Switch. I was like, surely this can't be right. And eventually ended up getting it on PlayStation as well. And I don't know, it just kind of one of those that slipped through the crack for me, even though I was interested in them because of them seeming like Inside and what's in Limbo, kind of that vibe, those style of games, light puzzle elements
style. Yeah.
And so I thought, oh, this is definitely that. I got to get to this. And it just kind of, it missed its window for me.
Yeah.
And for some reason recently, I think I just was wanting to play some quicker, smaller games, and I popped into it, and it was phenomenal. I played it. It's pretty short. It takes maybe 1, 2, 3 sittings, depending on how briefly you play for the main game. What is it, 4 chapters, 5 chapters?
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, so it's 4 to 5 hours, I would say, to play.
Yeah,
maybe a little less.
And I was just really, once I got into it, it was one of those games that we all have those games, I think, where you start it, play the first half an hour, put it away for a year or two, then you have to restart. So, but once I got past that initial mental block that I had, the game really sucked me in. The puzzles I thought were fantastic. Anyways, I'll start with just an overview. I thought it was an excellent game, and I'm really glad that I finally went back and played it, because it definitely is in the echelon of Inside and Limbo. And I probably enjoyed it just as much, if not competing for the top spot. I mean, probably not Limbo. Limbo's one of my all-time favorite tiny games like that. But
I
it
agree. I mean,
was
this is up there
not
in
disappointing.
quality. It's like, it's a serious contender. I probably liked it just a little bit more, mostly because I liked some of the things they picked. It was more of a subjectively, I liked certain elements just a teeny bit more than Limbo. But I would say quality wise, it's like they're both like, kind of punching in the same weight class. So it was good.
Yeah.
And I was looking for something smaller too, because I finished uh, Horizon Forbidden West, and I played that for like multiple months, and that was after playing Elden Ring and Shadow of the Erd Tree for multiple months, which was after playing Final Fantasy VII Original, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth back to back, which took me February to like May. So it's like I had just come off this gauntlet of humongous, super long involved games, which I love, but it was kind of like I need like a breather before I go into the next thing. And so I
Yeah,
decided to try.
you played so many more lengthy games than I
I
did this
did.
year.
I really
I've kind
did.
of this entire year. There's been a couple Erd Tree, and um, I'm sure there's another one. Spider-Man 2, I guess, is kind of lengthy, but like for the most part, I've been kind of withdrawing from the larger experience. They're too intimidating for me in 2024. So we'll see if
Yeah.
2025 changes. But especially toward the end of this year, like you, um, I've been kind of wrapping up some DLCs of things and some smaller games, and
Yep.
mentally decompressing from the year with other life stuff and whatever, and getting ready for the next year. So it's nice to play something smaller. So,
It is. It's
so
also
it
nice
sounds
because
like
it gives you a different feel. Like you can feel like there's like the indie creativeness. Like I love big games, and there are some really cool things that can only be done with huge teams and budgets that are really special. But there's something cool about a small thing that like a small team of people made that has a good artistic vision. It's a breath of fresh air a little bit. So, and that's how Little Nightmares was for me.
yeah, definitely. So, yeah, it sounds like it was a 9 or a 10 for you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And you played it all in one go, DLCs right after the game, right?
I played them all back to back. Yeah, not like in one sitting or anything, but over the course of
Right.
like 2 weeks, I played Little Nightmares 1 and then went right into the DLC, and then I played Little Nightmares 2. Um, and part of that is I was really enjoying it and I wanted to get through a few short things. And part of that was my 4-year-old daughter. She was kind of watching me play it, and I was like, I don't know if she should be seeing this. It's a little bit creepy. She became obsessed. Like to this day, she's still like, Dad, can you play Little Nightmares tonight? I'm like, I've beat the first Little Nightmares twice now. I've beat the second one twice. I'm like going through the DLC again, and I'm like, it's to the point where I'm actually getting a little tired of it because she's making me play it so much. But she just loves like the creepy.
She
She has
just
like
loves horrific imagery.
she does,
Perfectly
she has that
normal
macabre
4-year-old
streak
stuff.
that I always liked the creepy stuff when I was little. My older daughter does not at all, so it's just
Right.
funny to this little 4-year-old is
That actually
obsessed.
is really funny because you think about like Little Nightmares is designed to be nightmarish. Like the
Yeah,
creature, not creature, but more so like the character monster design of the people is just so um abnormal and just off,
off. Yeah, and
and
it's
just
it's
something that you genuinely would have nightmares about at 4 years old. So, or I
yeah,
would. I mean,
yeah.
I don't.
It's tailored to be like the nightmares from your childhood that it like still gets under your skin as an adult, but like as a kid, I was like, yeah, this is literally what you'd be staying up worrying about. And I
Not
mean,
her.
she would get scared at certain points and like hold on to me or like, but she liked the thrill of it, and so that kind of added an element of fun where we were able to enjoy it, and like it was kind of like a nice little bonding time thing too. But because of that, I blitzed through all of them, and they were all really good.
There you go. The way to get you to finish games quickly is if Maddie loves the game,
Yeah,
then
exactly.
you'll finish it quickly twice or three times. So, what would you say? So, just some talking points. What does this game do best? What did you like most about Little Nightmares 1 specifically?
Mm. I think the ambiance is just so good. Like it really captures that feeling of it takes like real world nightmarish things that are uncanny or unsettling or um, just feel vast and grown up in like the scary ways that as a kid, like the world of grown-ups, like all the unsettling, stressful, creepy things, it takes those and turns it into a world you can explore in a way that is cohesive and navigable, but still has that kind of surreal, dreamlike quality to it. And so as you're playing through it, it really does feel like you're playing through a nightmare, but it's one you can navigate. So I think that's just a really good achievement. Like, it very much fulfills what it's aiming to be. And then, of course, like, more specifically, like, there's puzzle mechanics and exploration and the story. I think the puzzle stuff was pretty good. The story was good. I really liked the theming of it too. Like, as you get to the end, it felt like it had a little something to say, and it kind of injected some um, reflectiveness, and it felt like there's a little bit of meaning in what they were doing with the narrative. It wasn't just, oh look, there's a jump scare, right? So it kind of, I feel like it'll stay with you for that reason too. What about you?
Yeah, I really like that. I'll get to that in a second, I guess. I really like, just from a presentation standpoint, the diorama like nature of the way the game is made. And you can see that in the level selection, because once you've beaten a chapter or the game or whatever, you can go back and select different chapters, and they're literally shown in kind of like a diorama way that you can select the chapters. But
Mm-hmm.
just the actual gameplay, you kind of have this diorama like area. And I don't know, it's kind of it's very much just like a 2D side scroller with a 2.5D. There is 3D elements and stuff, but the way that they did the camera or something just gives me more of a diorama feel. And I thought that was perfect for just kind of the creepy setting of like being in a house or crawling up into an attic or whatever it might be. And that combined with, what's funny is, originally what turned me off about the art style was how I thought it looked bad. It was very kind of hazy, blurry almost a little bit. But once I got into the game, I feel like that actually really fits the ambiance of the game. Everything's a little hazy and kind of hard to make out, and a little soft. Not a lot of sharp edges on objects or assets or anything like that. And I just feel like that all contributed to a very, very creepy, just off feeling environment that fit the narrative, fit everything they were trying to do. So I thought that was all great. I love the I always like it when you're a smaller character in environments that we're used to being smaller than us. And this isn't like the extreme of that. We're not talking like Grounded, Honey I Shrunk the Kids or anything, but you are a very, like, an overemphasized small child in a normal world. So like chairs are, you have to like, oh, you're muted, Zach.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you're like 30 to 40% smaller than a child would be. You're not
Yeah.
like, you're
And
not
it's
an
just
ant, but
perfect because
it's
like
weird. Yeah.
chairs you have to kind of like jump up onto. And so the proportions and sizing of that, I feel like, is just perfect to not be too much that it's super noticeable, but it just exaggerates it enough that everything feels that much bigger, to kind of emulate what it feels like to be a kid when everything feels bigger than it is. I feel like they nailed that as well. And just the
Yep.
puzzle design was great. I thought, especially in one, we can talk about the DLCs in a minute, but through the base game, I thought the puzzle difficulty was perfectly like tuned. There were a couple that you think about, nothing too hard and nothing that really stumps you for too long, but you kind of add in the puzzle element with the horror element in it.
Yeah.
It's enough to keep you
It's enough
engaged.
to keep you thinking and to do a little bit of mental work, but also enjoy the
Yeah,
ambiance. And I think when you're scared, it kind of adds just a little bit of pressure to the puzzles or problem
yeah, it
solving.
makes things
So
a tinge harder than maybe they would be if there's
yeah.
no suspense or anything added. So, and just the actual gameplay feels a little clumsy at first,
Mm-hmm.
but once you get used to the controls and the way you grab onto stuff or pick stuff up, there is a certain charm to it all that um, feels unlike any other game. It feels very specific to Little Nightmares, and just perfectly, again, accomplishes that goal of making everything feel a little bit bigger than it should be, since you're this scared little child, kind of. So, and then to get to the narrative that you mentioned, I thought that was really cool. As you get to the end of the game, for a game that says nothing, there's not really, I don't think there's any dialogue in this entire game. Um, it it pretty clearly says some things if you're paying attention, like just about um, abuse, or and how that can be cyclical, or it just has a really cool, interesting message that I wasn't expecting from a game with no dialogue, that really just kind of seems like a scary puzzle game. By
Yeah.
the end of it, I was just kind of like, dang, that was
Yeah.
kind of deep. That was
And
kind of deep and made you
it
feel some
uses
things.
it uses the medium too of like of the video games to specifically tell the story in a way that like is impactful. Like it helps you feel and realize these things through the game itself in a way that was neat. Like it definitely
Yeah,
hits
and I
home.
guess we can go into the DLC because I didn't play them back to back. I played the base game, then recommended it. You played the whole thing, and later on, after I finished some other things, I went back and played the DLC and the narrative again. I just finished the DLC a week or two ago, and one of the stronger narrative beats throughout the main game, the DLC wraps back around and kind of shows a different perspective of how that moment happened,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of one of those light bulb moments where it's just like, whoa, that it it hits you again. It really makes
Yeah.
an impact where um, it was definitely unexpected going into this
Yeah.
game. So
And it does that thematically, but also with the lore a little bit too. Where you're like, oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah, it teaches you, but it does such a good job of showing and not telling,
Mm-hmm.
and it shows a story. It shows how the world works. It's pretty expertly done in a lot of
I
ways
agree.
that
For
can
what
be.
it's yeah, it's like it's always hard to be like, is this a 9 or a 10? I feel like for what it's trying to do, I'd give it a
It's a
10,
10.
like
Yeah, like it
it
just
may not
doesn't do
be
anything wrong.
it's not going to crack my top 10 games of all time probably just because there's so many games I love, but this is really good. I love it. And it is like one of the best versions of this type of game you could get, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. So, if you haven't heard of Limbo, by the way, go play Limbo. It's incredible.
Yeah, Limbo's great too.
And then Inside, they were, kind of creepy puzzle, very minor platforming games, and this is very much in that vein. If you have heard of those games, if you love them, check out Little Nightmares or do Little Nightmares first and go back to those. It's not a long list. If I were to make like a a list for everyone of games like this, I mean, it's Limbo, it's Inside, it's Little Nightmares, and then I don't know where you go from there. I think that's kind of it. So the
Yeah.
fact that Little Nightmares lived up to that, I'm really excited about. I've been enjoying Little Nightmares 2, and I'm kind of sad to think of like being done with that because, like I said, these four games feel like they're the only ones who have done this well.
Yeah.
So if anyone knows any others like that, feel free to let us know. And also leaves me kind of like hoping, but also kind of scared that with Little Nightmares 3, um, will it be able to really live up to what 1 and 2 did because it's a different developer? Can they get that feel right? Can they get everything right? Because 1 and 2 are just so immaculately done so far, that it's hard to imagine a different developer coming in and just nailing
I
every
know.
aspect of that. So
I hope I hope they're able to, or at least get close, but yeah, because Little Nightmares 2 is also very good. Um, Maybe we can talk about how we'd rank them once you finish it, but I think it's in the same ballpark of quality, and it does some really fun things. Um, Progressing from Little Nightmares 1.
yeah.
So good stuff. Yeah, I and
So
now I've beat all of those. I haven't played Inside. That's the only one on that list I still
oh
need to
yeah, you
play.
should get to
So I
Inside.
still have that,
I would
but
say I would put Inside at the bottom
mm,
if I were to rank like Little Nightmares and Limbo, but it's really good. It still is. Inside just kind of has one of those what the heck moments at the end that it's just really worth playing. So go check
yeah,
that out next, and I'm sure Maddie will enjoy the weirdness
probably,
in that game
honestly,
as
yeah.
well. There are moments that she will. So,
Yeah.
as far as the DLC, before we move on, was there one that stood out, or any complaints about the game in general? Anything to mention?
No, I when I first started the DLC, it starts you in one of the areas you've been in the base game. And so, and for the first few minutes, I was like, oh, I feel like I'm just retreading the same ground I've already done. And I was a little bit worried. But pretty quickly, it starts to break off and you start going down like an alternate path and you start going into different places and different puzzles. And so that I think that becomes a non issue. And it starts you in the same places because of the way it's tied into the main story. So it works. And then I think
Yeah,
thematically that
that's
works
true.
very well. So at first, I had a little bit of that worry. By the end, I didn't. I feel like the puzzles were still really good. There were some really great set piece moments and like some creepy monsters that you faced. Some, it's like you're facing a similar monster you faced in the main game in a different way, which was kind of cool. But then there were some new monsters too. There's one in particular. I don't want to give anything away, but there's one monster in particular that I found pretty unsettling and had a puzzle element around trying to escape it, and it's good. It kept every Little Nightmares installment that I've played, whether it's this DLC or either of the two main entries, has taken some facet of childhood that terrified me that I'd forgotten about. And it's like, remember this weird specific
Remember how
fear that
much
you
you
had?
hate this?
And it's like the idea of something in the water and you're on a platform and you have to get to
I
the other
figured that's what
side.
you were talking about.
Yeah. Or it's like,
Kind of
things
almost like thalassophobia type,
totally.
just like what's underneath the surface fear. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was a good one.
And like archetypes of like weird grown-ups who you don't know, who intimidate you. Like it just plays on all the right things. And it kept like with the DLC and the other games is just continually, it'd be like, oh yeah, creepy. That I remember that type of fear, that specific flavor of fear. And you've given it to me again as a 33-year-old man. And I thank you for that because I need something to make me feel alive.
And I salute you.
So it was good.
Yeah, for the DLC, I liked how I wasn't expecting it to be a through line. I was kind of expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, but it was interesting that you play as a same different character. You play as a different character, but the same one through all 3 DLC episodes,
Yeah, it was
tying
almost
into the narrative.
like a mini game. Like it's
Yeah, it was
just
like
a shorter game.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the second one where you get to, um, a lot of the puzzles are based around collecting more of these little gnome creatures that are in the world, and them helping you accomplish things, and the giant like
Mm-hmm.
forge. I
Yeah,
thought that was a really cool set piece.
it
The one
was.
thing I will note about, I think it was the final DLC. Trying to remember. It's the one where you kind of have the multi-tiered, almost library thing,
Yeah,
and
that's the final
um,
one. Whoop. Hold on one second. There we
oh,
go.
I got muted.
Yeah,
Bizarre.
that's
When did I mute?
not
You're
that
talking
long
about
ago.
the 3.
Start with the library comment and
Yeah,
go
so
from
the
there.
library, you're collecting the 3 statues. You said it was the 3rd DLC. That one in particular, I did get kind of stuck on a couple puzzles, and I went to look up some hints or whatever, and I ended up being disappointed that I did, because in the end I really thought the puzzles were very clever. But what I will say is um they felt trickier and a jump up from
They
literally the
did,
rest of
yeah.
the game. And so if I had kind of, it's so tough to make puzzles, but for me, I wasn't mentally thinking the puzzles were going to jump like that. And so I was just like, what am I missing? If it's the puzzle is always such a tricky thing, because you have to know how much energy you're supposed to be putting into a puzzle and not
Yeah.
feel like you're wasting your time. I
Well, I
ended up
feel
really
like
liking the puzzles, but they did stump me, and they felt not similar to the difficulty of the rest of the game. So
it was up a bit, which kind of makes sense for a DLC in some ways. It's like, here's a little bit more and we're going to step it up, but it wasn't really communicated. And it also felt like the puzzle challenge really just ramped up at the end of the DLC.
yeah,
It
it was
wasn't.
just the 3rd one. I
So
had no
I
issue
think
1 and 2. So
from an expectation standpoint, that is, I had a similar thought. Um, and puzzles are tough for me too, because a lot of times what happens is I overthink things, and then when I finally look it up, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so simple. I literally didn't even consider something like that because I thought that was so simple.
yeah,
Not that I'm brilliant, but like sometimes that's how it goes, right? And then um, there were a few puzzles with this where you had to. I figured out most of them on my own, but there was like 1 or 2 pieces where I'm like, what is this? And then I looked up, I'm like, oh, okay, that actually is not as bad as I thought. But
I know, and I wish I'd have figured that out. But
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So I had a similar
yeah.
thought, and I think tuning puzzles is difficult, but
It's
it's
tough.
still
It's
still
tough.
good.
But if I were giving a critique to the game as far as game design goes, I do feel like there wasn't a communicated jump up. There wasn't a communicated jump up in
Mm-hmm.
difficulty. The 3rd one just kind of felt arbitrarily more difficult without communicating that. So awesome game. Like you said, I think it's a 10 out of 10. I'm really glad I played it. I think it very well might make my top 10 of the year this year. I just
Of the
really
year,
enjoyed
yeah,
my time with it. So,
yeah,
um, you ready to move on from that?
yep, it was good stuff. Let's keep
All
going.
right. Let me jump into something I played kind of at the tail end of October and into November, but I saved it because we had a lot going on last month. I played Rain World, and
Mm,
this, following the theme of games I've had in my library for who knows how long, and kind of assumed at this point I would never get to. Rain World is this game that has kind of a cult following, and I've always just wanted to like understand why? Like why is this game good is kind of the question I've always had. And I'm a little stubborn. Instead of just saying, oh, maybe I don't like it, there's a lot of games like that where I'm like, I want to understand why this is good to people. And so I finally jumped in and played Rain World in its entirety, just the base game, not the DLC. And I don't even know where to start with this game. It's a survival sandbox game that tells you almost nothing. And if you think you're going to die a lot in Dark Souls, like this game takes that to another level. You're a little slug cat is what the character is referred to. You're basically a cat, but like very floppy. The game operates under a physics engine, so it's not like animation based. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe that, but just physics. So your little slug cat kind of like will flop around and interact with like trip over stuff. It's very interactive with the world. So I don't know. This game is both fascinating and infuriating at the exact same time. Like the whole premise is that you are trying to explore this world. It's a 2D kind of pixel art looking side scrolling game at its core. And the goal is just to explore the world. But every 10 to 15 minutes, there is a massive rainstorm that comes and floods everything. And you die if you're caught out in it. So the goal is to explore, keep yourself fed. That's the only other real game mechanic is you have a hunger meter. And you have to have enough food in your stomach and find a hibernation spot before the rain comes. That is the gameplay loop over and over and over again.
Okay.
And try and get further and further into this world. But alongside that, you're trying to find food so that you can hibernate, get further into the world so you're not hibernating in the same place over and over again. Because when you hibernate, it consumes, half, if not more of your food.
Right.
And then there's also every creature. There's all kinds of bizarre creatures in this world, and you are at the bottom of the food chain pretty much. So everything is trying to eat you or kill you, chase you. And that's really the premise of the game. It gets kind of weird, and I don't want to spoil anything. It gets very, like, there's some really wacky lore and some stuff I was not expecting in this game. That I feel like it's worth experiencing, but man, it's difficult to recommend this game to almost anyone unless you just are really fascinated by game design and sandboxes and have the patience and brute force to like not put something down when you get frustrated and just try to understand mechanics that aren't explicitly told to you or whatever. This game has a wiki that is just like as long as can be, explaining different movement tech and different mechanics, different interactions with objects and creatures. Like none of this is explained to you in the game. So I don't know. Yeah. From there, do you have any questions? I've kind of had to grapple with how I feel about this game because it was truly infuriating in moments, but it was also incredibly addictive in its simplicity.
Yeah.
It kind of, even though it's not really a roguelike, it kind of has that like,
I could see
you want to head back out one more time and try and do this better or do this
one
right
more run. Yeah.
One more run feeling. So,
I mean, that loop sounds appealing to me. I love creatures and I love like food chain and weird creatures hunting you type stuff. I like that. Looking up some of the art and some of the alien creatures, I'm definitely intrigued. And the basic loop of gotta find food, get farther, find hibernation. That sounds cool to me, but also like the level of difficulty is really intriguing. Like you keep saying how hard this is, and I look at the artwork and I'm like, how could this be that hard?
how could this be so hard?
So I want to try it for that reason alone. I don't know
I will
if it's
say,
something that I will make much progress in, but I'm
intrigued. So for those who are intrigued, but maybe the difficulty is a turnoff, there is a different character you can start with called the monk, and presumably I've never played as the monk. It makes your playthrough easier. It has certain perks and abilities that I won't spoil, like game mechanics, but like just in general, I think creatures are less aggressive toward you, which can be helpful. So I ended up getting the platinum for this game, which was a bit of a pain, but like I said, I finished the game and just kind of still had that itch to keep playing it in that roguelike way. And so I ended up getting the platinum. And what's interesting too is in the beginning, everything is terrifying, and it actually almost has a horror like element to it because you are this tiny, helpless, very clumsy slug cat. Um, and everything's out to get you. So a creature will come on screen and you are just like running for your life to try and get away from it. There's a mechanic where you can pick up certain things like little rocks or whatever, or sometimes there's like little thorns you can find, and
Mm-hmm.
you're just like trying to throw it at this creature and get the creature to back off. It's very like, I don't know, animalistic and visceral in that way. Like
Yeah.
it just is it's very unique. There's no other game that I've played that's like it, and I can see why it has a cult following. I wasn't interested enough at this time to go into the DLC, because the DLC I discovered is essentially there are different types of slug cats that are introduced, all have different mechanics, and all playthroughs of different slug cats are at like different points in the timeline. So the map will be similar, but certain areas will be different. There might be extra map added on to. That's kind of how they do the DLC. And I was just like, I don't really feel like jumping into that at this time. Maybe I will someday.
Yeah.
But it's just it's really one of those. I guess the best way to describe this is it's one of those games that is that category. I've liked the term called Metroidvania. That's exactly what this is. There are really no fundamental upgrades that you get for your character whatsoever. You just learn how to do things. And so someone who boots up Rain World for the first time is gonna bumble around like a dummy and get destroyed all the time. Whereas someone who's played 50 hours, 100 hours of Rain World can look like a master of the wilderness as they jump in as this slug cat and be defeating creatures that you would normally run from. And it's all just it's very interesting in that way. The more you
Yeah.
learn, the better you get, the stronger you get in the game.
And
So
you're a big fan of that type of
I am. I
game,
think it's
right?
really cool when an unlock is not a button you click or a level you reach, when it's
Mm-hmm.
something mental where you're like, oh, I understand how to do this better now, or how I can interact with this part of the game to get a different result.
Yeah.
I think that's some of the best. I think that's probably some of the hardest game design to create. But when it's done well, I think it is probably the most rewarding game design you can give to a player.
Yeah.
So, and this has elements of that. It's just wrapped in a little bit too much frustration for the average person.
Yeah.
So there you
Cool.
have it. I don't know if you're a masochist or not, but there's Rain World for you. And I
I mean,
finally,
I've gone through most of the Souls games at this point, so I could see myself trying this eventually. It's not a huge priority for me at the moment, but I'm intrigued, and I think it's in the Steam library, so our collective
yeah,
family
boot it up
library
on the
of which
Steam
I'm a
Deck when you
child. Um, so yeah,
maybe
I
maybe an airplane game, because you'll be so
maybe
stressed from Rain World you won't think about anything else.
right, exactly, the turbulence. I don't even notice the turbulence. So,
Oh man. All right. What do you got?
um,
You got something next?
yeah. So the first thing I finished in November was I finally finished the Burning Shores DLC for Horizon Forbidden West.
Oh yeah.
So I beat Forbidden West, I think
We'll
in
come
early
back to that.
October or something. I beat it like a month prior to this, and then I started the DLC. And I had played so much Horizon that I was like, I'm gonna mess around with a few other things. But then I was like, no, I need to finish this up. I love it. The DLC is incredible, and I was like, let's just do it so that I have this experience buttoned up for the year. And I'm glad I did, because the Burning Shores is the best of Horizon Forbidden West distilled into like a I don't know, maybe 10-hour
Yeah, 10
runtime,
to 20.
10 to 20. Like, it depends on
10 to
how much you're doing.
mainline, 20 to do everything probably.
Yeah, maybe 15. I forget how much time. I think I did most of the side quests, so maybe it was 15 or so. It's a good size amount of content for a DLC. Like, there's plenty there. Um, but it is like a lot of the best elements of Forbidden West, from the world design to the storytelling to some new creatures and weapon types, and then ultimately, um, I think my two favorite things about the Burning Shores were um, some of the side characters I thought were really good. Like, I actually liked the side characters in the Burning Shores more. They're more memorable and they felt more real than a lot of the side characters throughout the earlier game. And kind of seeing their character storylines progress. And then the other thing was like the climactic sequence of the end of that DLC, like the boss fight you go through and how that narratively plays out, and then how that plays out mechanically and in the world without giving away any spoilers. Like it makes a great use of the environment, and it makes great use of like the epic vistas. And it felt like a next gen experience. Like I know we sometimes talk about, we've been caught in this weird limbo of cross gen, and then with COVID, it like pushed all these dates back, and it feels like we've been in the cross gen like timeline for a long time. And not that many games have really felt transcendently next generation, other than a few. This DLC felt a little bit like that, and I think it's a mixture of like, they tuned everything well, but also just like the way they cinematically portrayed everything. It was just an incredible experience,
Yeah.
and one of
Cool.
the best final boss fights I've played in a while, and it was
Mm-hmm.
just so cool. So yeah, we talked a lot about Forbidden West last episode, so I won't rehash everything I said there. But if you enjoyed Forbidden West, you should definitely play the DLC. You're gonna love it. It's it's meaningful and it's worth it. And Forbidden West is an incredible game, and this is a nice capstone to that.
I know. If only me from several months ago could hear you now.
If
Um,
only, yeah,
yeah, we could just insert everything I said back then. The final boss sequence is genuinely one of the most epic, well done boss, like modern bosses. I think, like full stop. It's
yeah,
just, it really is one of those moments where while doing it, I was just kind of marveling at everything that was happening in real time that felt
yeah.
like this should be a cutscene, and this is happening in real time. So
Mm-hmm.
fantastic fight. The new creatures and some of the mechanics that come with the new creatures are really cool.
Yep.
Like you said, I think the characters, I think they are finally giving Aloy a personality, two
Yeah.
games in at the end of the DLC. And the way she interacts with certain characters and the characters themselves in the DLC were all pretty good. The villain too. I thought the narrative of
He was
everything was
good.
really well
Yeah.
done. At the end of it all, it's just, yeah, Horizon Forbidden West. Once we're past all the launch issues, at this point is a bit of an underrated game, I would say. And it's a 9 out of 10 easy. This bumps it up a half or a full point. I still have
Mm-hmm.
critiques and things I could get into the details about, but like this bumps it up to, it just feels like a 10 out of 10 game when you add on this DLC
Totally.
and take it as a whole experience. Um, just really impressive and rounds the whole game out. So
Yeah.
super worth. I don't know I think on sale I got it for $10, but it's just like, that was so worth it. It was
For the DLC.
such good content where sometimes DLC can fall a little flat. I feel like this was, like you said, the best of the game distilled into the DLC to
Yeah.
make an even better experience. So glad you finished that
I
finally.
know. It feels good because I was so excited because I loved Horizon Zero Dawn, and when this came out in 2022, I was like so hyped, and I started it, and then Elden Ring came out, and then I had some other stuff happen that year with like job changes and other stuff, and I got away from it. And part of the reason I picked
The
it up this
classic
year,
Horizon experience.
yeah, exactly. Part of the reason I picked it up this year is like I don't want to let any more, like I need to have played this. It's been two going on 3 years. So I'm glad that I've experienced it. It's worth it. And it's not that it wouldn't be worth experiencing a year or 2 years from now, but it's just like one of those things that I knew I was going to love. So I just wanted to like
Yeah.
do it,
I know you should have waited for the PS5 Pro.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Let's see. I finished Echoes of Wisdom, which we talked about mostly last month, but just the
Mm-hmm.
ending was good.
Yeah.
Is a good little game. It's not one that's like gonna make my top 10, top 20 of all time, but I would say for a top down isometric, whatever you want to call the classic Zelda style, I
Yeah.
think it's about as good as you can do. Um, and I thought the ending wrapped everything up really. The ending sequence and boss and everything was really well done. So
Cool. Yeah. I plan to check
um,
that out eventually.
yeah, it was good. It was a good time. I played Bow Path of the Teal Lotus
Okay.
last month. So
Yeah.
are you familiar?
Mildly. I've seen some trailers. It's on my list of things to check out eventually. The color
Okay.
scheme, the teal.
So
The
the
titular
teal,
teal.
the lotus. Yes, I know all of these things.
Yeah, that's a word
I'm
I've heard
quite
before, for
familiar.
sure. Yeah. Bow. Yeah.
It's a Metroidvania, I guess. Yeah, it's a Metroidvania. It definitely is a Metroidvania. It's a little bit more focused on aerial combat. I would actually say is like the main focus of this game, and it actually does it really well. Movement is
Interesting.
very precise. You're like this little Hollow Knight looking dude, as we've become accustomed to since 2016. The art style is really vibrant, and it's fun to look at. It's a good looking game. I will say, for my taste, it's a little to borrow a term from earlier that I loved. It's a little diorama esque in its like characters, and I can't think of a better way to describe that other than like, let me know if this makes any sense. But like when you play a game and the characters or like the people or whatever feel bigger than they should in the world, and it
The
kind of gives it,
opposite of Little Nightmares.
yeah, but it kind of gives it
Yeah.
this like, it doesn't feel as real. It doesn't feel like a lived in world, which not every game has to, I guess. But to me, that's
I do
kind of puts me
understand
off
what you're
to it a little
getting
bit.
at. Yeah, it almost feels like you're on this little set.
Yeah, it feels like a set. That's exactly it. It feels like a stage or a set or a
Mm-hmm.
play or whatever. Yes, that's exactly what it feels like. So this has that a little bit, which is entirely personal. But for me, I like in Hollow Knight, I feel like I'm getting lost in Hollow Nest. It feels like a place. Everything feels
Yep.
very immersive and whatever. This doesn't necessarily have that, but I will say that the environments, the art style, um, they accomplished what they set out to do. And if you're not weirdly picky about that like I am, it probably won't bother you. But as far as the gameplay, very heavily focused on aerial movement for the combat. You are like, the goal of combat is to stay in the air. Basically, you're pogoing off stuff. You have double jumps when you, I think when you hit when you like attack or hit something, you regain your dash or your double jump. Like you're just always trying to stay in the air. And the
That's kind
longer
of
you
cool.
stay in the air, your tea kettle, which is like your healing thing, can
Mm-hmm.
also be used to as like a resource to use one of your gadgets or trinkets. And the longer you stay in the air, your tea kettle will start to boil, and then your gadgets do more damage. So it's really built around that concept, and for that, I think that gives it its kind of unique flavor
Mm-hmm.
instead of feeling the same as everything else. And there were moments that I didn't love as much, but I played this game to death for a couple days. Tried to get the platinum. It has a stupid beat the game without dying platinum, which I did, cheesing it, of course, with cloud saves or just like quitting out whenever I got to one health. But the trophy did not pop, so another one of
That's
those, and I'm
annoying.
just like, all right, I'm not doing another 5 hours of this to try and
Yeah.
maybe get this trophy again. I hate that stuff,
I
but
hate that trophy in general, but then if the trophy's not even reliable, like what are we doing?
I know
Don't have
it's
a buggy trophy for like the worst kind of trophy.
I know.
Come on.
And it wouldn't have been the end of the world because I got to the end of the game and I was enjoying it enough that I was like, you know what, I want to play some more. Let me do a new playthrough. Let me try and get this trophy. And I did it, and it didn't pop. And that was it's always such a souring experience when you're just like,
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to play this game more, but I also feel betrayed that I spent 5 hours now and for
For nothing.
ultimately for nothing, even though
When I could have
trophies
had
are
a
meaningless
meaningless
anyways.
trophy.
Exactly. There's some really good boss fights in this game.
Yeah.
By the end of it, you are zipping all over and doing all kinds of crazy
That's cool.
maneuvering, and there's some really cool movement tech and ability upgrades. I feel like it does a good job of giving you the stuff you're used to getting in a Metroidvania, as well as giving you, some maybe more surprising abilities. Um, some really well designed boss fights. I will say the final boss fight was like probably as close as I've ever seen. I mean, Hollow Knight gets close too, but like just thinking of um, the Lord Ishin from Sekiro, and just kind of
Oh,
the
okay. Yeah.
the gauntlet and the test and the mastery of skills you have to finish that game.
Mm-hmm.
This very much felt like that. Like the final boss is no joke in this game, and um, by the time I beat the game twice and did it without dying, I had to beat the final boss without dying essentially. So every time I got to one health, I'd quit out and restart. I got really good at it, and it just kind of felt like um, you kind of master it. You
Yeah.
master the move set. You know exactly what he's doing, how to counter it. So if that sounds appealing to you, this game does that really well, and the movement is very precise. No qualms or issues with like the game demands precise movement, and it is built to allow that. It definitely is very precise in its movement. It has the like you can press the button longer to jump higher. You can press it, just really quickly to jump short. You have very very tight control over your character. So
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed it, but I also am left kind of feeling like at the end of the day, despite everything it does so well and how much I enjoyed it, it's one of those games that I feel like will end up being kind of forgettable. And that's kind of
Yeah.
a weird, it's kind of a weird juxtaposition, but that happens a lot with games where I'm like, oh, I love this. And then I get to the end of it and I'm just kind of like, nothing really sticks with me though about it. So
It's interesting too, because it sounds like it has this really interesting aerial combat system with kind of a bit of a unique um, mechanic loop of like staying in the air and exhausting your things and building up your tea kettle. And it has a pretty distinctive art style. Like that's why I remembered of it as I saw it. I was like, that looks cool. The color scheme, the teals and reds and pinks, and um, it's true. I think there's kind of if things don't fully come together, it's hard to put your finger on why or even articulate it sometimes, but that can
and it's
happen.
also entirely personal. Like
Yeah.
it really just might be a me thing. Some game, an 8 out of 10 may really resonate with someone and be one of their favorite games of all time, or an 8 out of 10 might be a game where you're like, oh, that was really good, and you kind of forget about
And
it.
you kind of forget about it.
So
Yeah, that's so true. I would like to try this at some point because it has enough things that I like. But yeah,
it's really good. I would recommend it. I would give it an 8 to an 8.5 out of 10. It's probably great on Steam Deck.
yeah, that's
If
probably
you're
if I
if you're
play it, I
someone
can
who
make that.
likes Metroidvania games
Mm-hmm.
and pretty good, tight, precise combat, it's worth checking out because I think you'll know pretty quickly if you're into it or not. So
For sure, for sure. Um. Okay. Well, I there's only one other game that I finished in November, and that is Tears of the Kingdom.
oh
A little
yeah,
old thing you may have heard of
we
called.
forgot the confetti. The confetti is supposed to go off in like a
Is
parade
there
of
a feature for that
lights.
in our podcast thingy? No, I don't think there
I
is.
don't know, but there should be. That's
Maybe in post. I won't do.
what
I
a
won't do it in post.
monumentous occasion for
I
Never
know.
Lag Gaming.
Um, so this is monumental because, or momentous, monumentalous, because Breath of the Wild is my favorite game. I think in the modern gaming age
It
as
was.
an adult, it was yeah. And I think you have the same opinion. And Tears of the Kingdom kind of supplanted that. I think for
It's
you
somehow better
last
in
year,
every
it's somehow
way.
better. And I wish I had something new to add to what you've said in the past, but I don't. I think
We're an echo chamber here. It's okay.
we are
Just
an echo chamber,
yeah,
but we're the best echo chamber. So make sure to like and subscribe.
exactly.
Make sure to get your opinions from us, folks. Um,
Make sure to repeat your opinions from us.
that's right. I think the best way I can sum it up, we talked a decent amount about Tears of the Kingdom, I think, in the last episode because I started playing it last month, I believe, and we've talked about it a lot throughout the years. So I'll try and keep it brief. But Breath of the Wild was a 10 out of 10 for me easily, maybe an 11. I don't know. Where Breath of the Wild is a
It's
10
the
out of
best game
10
of all time.
is the
Yeah,
best game I'd ever played. This is a 12 out of 10, and
yeah.
and I don't I I can't understand how they did it. What's interesting is I've seen a lot of people online who dislike Tears of the Kingdom. I've seen a lot of opinions that it doesn't do enough new stuff, which I disagree with. I've seen a lot of opinions that the new stuff it does isn't good or isn't interesting, which I disagree with. Um, the one thing that tends to be the case is I think people do generally like the story. So I'm glad that there is some common sense, a through line of common sense. um, but ultimately, like, this is just somehow better than the best game I've ever played by, and not by just a little, like by a decent amount, like it. And Breath of the Wild still holds up. Like I'm still going to go back and replay Breath of the Wild someday, and I'll also replay Tears of the Kingdom. But it takes everything it taught you and all the ways it reshaped video games with open worlds, the philosophy of anywhere you can see, anywhere the light touches belongs to us. No, that's Lion King. Anywhere you can see, you can climb and traverse for the most part. Um, and it teaches you just like how vast and how, um, I don't know, and it just gives you such a different experience that you've never gotten before. And I feel like Tears of the Kingdom looked at that and thought, well, how do we change expectations without removing that feeling? Because if they just did the exact same thing again, it wouldn't give you that feeling. And that's where the tiered system comes in. If you have Hyrule's still there, but it's reshaped a little bit. There's kind of a big event that, blows a hole in the middle of Hyrule, and a lot of the debris and things have changed. It's been a few years. It's kind of like a slightly post-apocalyptic world where there's things happening. So the world feels like it's moved on. And I think what's neat is it feels like I know this world so intimately that when I come across the changes and people reacting to things, it feels fresh, but also it feels real. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when I was here
It
2 years
literally
ago.
feels like you're returning to parts of Hyrule
Yeah.
6 years later,
Yeah. And with big
like in the
fantasy things
real
that have
world.
happened. And I'm
Things
like,
have
oh my
changed,
God,
and yeah,
last time I was here, I, helped this lady do this thing, but now there's these weird Gibdo creatures who've taken over, and everyone's like in hide, like, in the desert, everyone's in hiding. Or it's like things like that, where it's just it's immersive and cool, and but it feels like you're returning to a real place because you spent so much time there. But it's also different enough. It feels so reactive and realistic. Um, but then on top of that, there's new frontiers. If it was just that, I think I would agree a little bit that it was, maybe treading a little too
100%. If it
close
was
to
just the
familiar
ground
ground.
of Hyrule, it
But
would
it's
be hard
not.
to swallow. Yeah.
Um, you start the game in islands floating in the sky, like some of the debris that float from this explosion is now like this floating archipelago of islands like throughout the map, and they're scattered all over the entirety of the map. And there's the verticality of it. It's kind of like Elden Ring, where it's like these developers realized we can use verticality to our advantage, and to a point where, as a gamer, like, there'll be some sky islands you can see in the distance, and when you finally get up there, you realize, oh, this stretches really high, like into the stratosphere. And then, as a side note, they have all these good little details, like some of the highest islands, like way up in the stratosphere, the gravity starts to get less, and so you're like moonwalking. I'm like, what a fun little detail, where it's like you feel how you're in
How did they
we got
how
into
did they
Hyrule space, basically
how did they
low
notice
space.
how did they even fathom that they could do more with verticality while working on the Switch? That's what I don't understand. How
I
did
don't
they
understand how any of
how
it's
did they
possible on the
accomplish? I
Switch.
think honestly Tears of the Kingdom on the Switch might be one of the greatest technical marvels that humans have ever, like, if you believe we landed on the moon, then that's probably it, and then Tears of the Kingdom. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know. It's
decades
insane
from
what
now,
they did.
people will look at that and say Tears of the Kingdom was faked.
It
It's
was
part of
never
the
it never ran
liberal
on the
agenda.
Switch.
Yeah, it never happened.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's really crazy. I think that if you're a developer out there who made a successful, just amazing game that everyone loved, and you're trying to make a sequel, go study Tears of the Kingdom, because I don't understand.
Yeah,
Like, this has to be the only universe in which we possibly got a better game than Breath of the Wild.
yeah,
In 99 other times, it would have failed to meet expectations,
yeah.
and they just, like you said, you said you'll go back and play Breath of the Wild, and I will too, because I love that game. It was the first. It's a special game for me, but Tears of the Kingdom is so good in so many different ways that I have no doubt that when I go back to play Breath of the Wild, it will feel a little emptier. It will feel,
It
there'll
will.
be things where I'm like, oh yeah, that wasn't in this game.
Or I can't interact.
And
I can't interact with and take control of the world in the ways I want to, that I can do in Tears of the Kingdom.
yeah, and I
Because
continue to see stuff pop up on YouTube or on Instagram of things people have made with the building blocks and
yeah,
the things that you can create in the game, and it's just like, it's absolutely insane, the pieces that they gave you, the
yeah,
physics that it's all built around, and the ways that people can put those together in ways that it should work and should make sense. But most times you're like, oh, that wasn't coded properly, it doesn't work. No, it just works. Like, these crazy weird contraptions.
yeah,
The other day I saw one with, you have like a little stand that you can stand on with a steering wheel as one of your main things, and you can connect that to all manner of different things to help control as vehicles. They had put that on a wheel, with like one of the buoys that keeps you upright, and then attached at the bottom and the top 2 canoes. So there's a canoe at the top and on the
Oh,
bottom.
I saw that. And it was
And
like
it
a
just
water
like
wheel.
rotates, and they're just like rolling
You're
around
just
the
like,
world. And then on water too, it just rolls through the water. And it's just like, I keep seeing stuff years later that's just like people are still.
it's ingenious, and it's crazy to think
It's
that
wild.
how do you build something that supports this level of ingenuity from everybody without breaking the game for a game that is like a narrative experience with like 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 this isn't just a pure sandbox mess around game, but it kind of is on top of that. So I don't know how they did all that, and
Yeah.
like you said, I think that's part of the way this game is better beyond having the Sky Islands, and I guess minor spoilers, it's been a couple years now. There's also like the underground area, so you have like a
Yeah.
three-tiered
Yeah. The
system,
chasm.
lots of verticality. But the other piece they give you that makes the game feel new is not just new areas in the world, but new ways you interact with it. So these building blocks where you can craft machines that let you, like create a weird canoe water wheel that can traverse land and sea, or create like a weird like rocket hover ship
Hover
thing,
bike. Yeah.
hover bike that you can like fly to the ends of the map. Some of the verticality too, of like these archipelago islands, like they go so high that it's like you have to think about,
You have to
you have to
figure out how to get
build
to
weird
them.
machines that can make it
Yep.
there, and it's kind of hard to do
I
that.
love how they created the system, and then they found such good ways to make you use it all the time. Even
It
as
felt
simple
so
as the
valuable.
dude with the sign that needs the sign stood up.
Yeah,
Every time I saw him, I wasn't like, another one of him. I was just like, oh, cool. There's
sweet,
somehow
I
there's
love this.
more. When will
Yeah,
this ever end? There's another one, and then you create some weird contraption
to
to
get it
keep
to
the
stay
sign
up.
up.
Yeah,
And I would take a screenshot of every single one because each one was just like ludicrous,
hilarious.
like so over designed and unnecessary. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
they give you all these cool tools that change how you interact with the world, and then they give you so many great opportunities to use them in ways that are fun. And it's interesting too because people always think, how do you make something in a video game feel meaningful? And I think the answer is often, here, we'll give you a reward. In this, it's like helping this guy get the sign up. It's like the action was the reward, and you'd
the
get a little
action is the
reward too.
fun.
And
Yeah,
but I
it's
think that's,
simple. Just make a game fun. It's not
yeah,
simple at all, though.
it's not like in like concept it is, but in
Yeah,
practice it's
but in
very hard.
practice,
But
yeah.
it's one of those things where it's like, you see the Destinies and all the live service games of the world of like, how do we make this engaging? It's like,
Well, I mean, the difference is the goal there is monetization, not
and to keep you playing
true
for literally
engagement.
ever. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So,
that's the point though, is like the goal here is like, they thought of how do we make
yeah.
something enjoyable and fun, and they did it to the point where it's like, then you'd get a little reward from it and be like, cool, like I'm glad to get it. But it's like, I just did it for the fun of like seeing how it went.
Yeah. The
Um,
rewards were actually so that was a little annoying. I almost wish they didn't give you a reward because the rewards were so dumb that it was just like, it almost reminded you, oh, the reward is dumb every time. Where it's like, honestly, I would have rather just helped him put the sign up because I wanted to do it every time, But,
yeah. I didn't care.
anyways,
Getting dumb little weird random stuff was fine. I was like,
it's like,
oh,
here's
okay.
3 berries. It's like, all right, dude,
I
you can keep those, I guess.
know. Yeah. Thanks. I'll add this to my pile of 600.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll attach it to
anyway,
a shield and I don't know.
yeah, and make a berry shield that doesn't do anything. But I guess, yeah, the weapon system, a big complaint a lot of people have about both of these games is the durability system. And it never really bothered me because I just approached I knew it was that. And so I just approached the game very differently, and so it worked fine for me. That being said, I feel like this game is cool because your weapons break, but you always have the tools to make another really good weapon. And
I think they more or less fixed it, honestly.
I think so. And, or, as someone who didn't
The
have much of an
fusibility.
issue with it, the fusibility, because it's like, oh, this weapon's going to break, but I know how to make it. And I have the pieces and I can go get the pieces. And there's like a fun kind of discovery crafting
Yeah.
system of, okay, I got this weird fire Lyselfoss, Lizzlefoss, I don't know how to pronounce that, horn.
I couldn't even tell you that word unless
And,
I looked at it.
yeah, and
Lizalfos.
Lizalfos. Is
I
that
think
it?
that's
Okay.
what it is. I don't know.
I got this cool fire horn from the lizard guy. Let's see, I already put it on a dagger and that was cool. Well, what if I put it on a club? And it's like things like that where,
What will it do? What will it look like?
it's
Yeah.
also
And
like,
the other thing
okay,
I didn't even think about until right now is the fusibility. Why I'm putting together why it fixes the issue is because in Breath of the Wild, you can only have like, what was it, 10 to 15 weapons at a time. So it's like, yeah, you could keep a couple copies of the same weapon,
yeah,
but in
that
this,
was
you
it.
could have like 50 things that can make it. And
Yeah.
so, you could
And
kind
you're
of
like,
collect
okay,
and always be ready to make another one.
Totally.
So
And the other thing they did is minor spoilers again, but in the depths, there were these like little shrines or like cairns where there's like a ghostly guy holding weapons that you could go down and get like really nice weapons down in the depths. And then so if you realized, okay, I love when I have like a certain type of sword and this type of ingredient, and the ingredients you can have like 50 of them or 100 or whatever, you can have so many of the ingredients. If you run out of like the swords, you kind of have an area to go look to be like, okay, I can find the type of sword I need if I really want to fairly easily, which takes you to a different area in the map, which leads to different discovery. And so they kind of baked this in with this great discovery loop, taking you between the tiers to find the types of resources. And then, like you said, that way you don't have to feel so stressed about, oh, I used up this weapon and it broke. That's fine. I got some other
just make
stuff
another
and
one.
I'll make another one. Or like when I come across another blade, I got another one of these things ready. I don't feel that fear of like I'm missing out on weapons nearly as much. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
And it uses that fusion, like the environment. It's great.
Yeah.
And then I kind of last note on like the way you interact with things is the ascend ability. It's like kind of like they realized, okay, you're going to be underground a lot. And you're going to be like in islands that are tiered vertically. You've already explored a lot of these places. How do we just make this a breeze? What if you could teleport through the sea? I felt like they created a developer ability like for
Yeah.
QA
Yeah,
testing. And they were like,
totally.
what if we just gave this to people? And it was so cool to like have that. And sometimes I didn't use it because I wanted to like go the other way. Because part of the joy of this game is the journey. But sometimes it's like, I don't need this journey right now. I need to get on top of that mountain and I'm underneath it, zip through it, and then I can do my stuff and I can go enjoy the other things this game has to offer in terms of exploration
Yeah.
and whatever.
It was always wild being down in a cave and getting to the end of it. And that's the other thing that was cool is it allowed them to not always make like an arbitrary teleportation point out of a cave, or like a cave that came back up to the surface.
Yeah.
You could make dead ends, and then you're like, oh, I'm at the dead end. Whoop, let me just
Yeah.
whoop out of here up to the surface.
And you get to
And
pick
you'd
your
always
own.
pop. It never bugged out. It
Never
always
bugged out.
worked. It's wild.
And it was always fun to be like, oh, I'm here. And
Yeah,
I
where
love
am I?
that
Oh,
in video games and in real life. I love the feeling of like exploring and then realizing, oh, this is where I am, where you reorient your perspective. That's something
yeah.
I just love in general. Like, and that's why I love From Software games where you're going through this circuitous level design and you unlock a door and you're like, oh, I'm back to this area. Like, I love that type of feeling. And you kind of get that very organically from the ascend ability. And on top of that, they also used it often for like, they designed around it where you'd be like, oh, I need to get into that building that's locked, and there's a cave system underneath it. So I got
Oh
just the
yeah.
power. There's a couple of times where they'd use this type of thing, and
Some
so
of the
then it's like
towers. Yeah.
I have to go through the cave system and find like, and then I'd pop out. And what's cool too is they give you the ability like when you first pop out, you can cancel it and just go right back down. You don't have to like do the full thing and then go back under. Like they give you
That's
like a
true. That is a
cancel.
brilliant like little thing you might not even think
It's
to
just like
call
you're
out, but
popping
the
your head
fact
out
that
of the
it,
ground and
yeah,
looking around, and I'd be like, "Oh no,
will
the
go
building
for.
is still 10 feet that way." So zip down and then go back and try and navigate the caves. Like, I think I need to go this way.
Oh my gosh,
It
dude.
just I have not had the joy of exploration ever in a game like I have in this. It made me feel like a kid again in all the best ways, and it's just a marvel. And it's just a marvel of video games. I know we've been on it for a
I
while,
know
so
here we are in 2024 at the end, still talking about Tears. I swear I could literally discuss this for an hour a month. I could
that's
have a
how I
Tears of
feel.
the Kingdom podcast
We
where it's
kind of
just
have
like, it's just
Tears of the
insane.
Kingdom pod.
I don't think a game will ever top it. I don't know how a game
I don't
ever
know
is
how a
better
game
than
could.
Tears of the Kingdom. At least
I would
not
like
for
to
a
see a game
very
try.
long time. Yeah.
Yeah. And for the types of games I like, it's hard to imagine, but I never thought something could top Breath of the Wild. So it's probably possible, but it's a very, very high bar. The last thing I'll say is the story of this one's really good. Maybe one of my biggest not issues, but like critiques of Breath of the Wild was the story was pretty weak. You got some flashbacks. There was a
Very
little bit there.
backseat,
It's
ethereal.
backseat, and in some ways that's its charm. Like it's very much like that game is about sitting in quiet and discovering the aftermath of big epic things and living in the
And
quiet that
because
comes
of how it
after.
did it, I think it made Tears of the Kingdom better.
Yes. And
But as a
it lets you sit in
standalone,
that quiet
yes.
and meditate like a Zen monk for 100 hours in Hyrule, and then when you come back in Tears of the Kingdom, you have this
All this stuff's happening.
appreciation, and I feel it more at one with that version of Hyrule than I do with anywhere on Earth. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I've connected with nature and communed with
Yeah,
the soul of
the
Hyrule.
forest.
So that when it gets bombastic and crazy, it suddenly feels like the stakes are higher. But the story in Tears of the Kingdom is much better, I think. Not just because it's more present.
And the story
The
moments.
moments
There's
are really good.
several that are just like,
It has some good like reveals and like revelations that are like, oh, that's so cool or interesting. Um, and the way it tells them, like, I mean, it kind of is a better version of Breath of the Wild where you find memories that are unlocked throughout the map. So it encourages you to explore. But in this one, it's like instead of just finding a spot of the memory or whatever, it's like you have to go up into the sky and like look for these patterns and then find the tier and unlock it. And it just creates this like system of traversal and a little bit of a collectathon. Um, and it all ties together so well.
piecing together a narrative that has a huge payoff that's
Like I
probably
would,
one of the
yeah,
greatest in gaming ever.
totally. I would say, a couple of good payoffs, but one in particular.
Yeah.
And then some, I don't want to give any big spoilers away, but some great cinematic set piece moments that are like on par with like God of War 2018
We
stuff.
literally
Where
just need to have a spoiler cast about
we
Tears of
probably
the
should do a
Kingdom. It's
spoiler cast.
2024.
Yeah,
Uh,
in this, since that's not what we
that's fair. We
advertised.
didn't outline it. Yeah.
Um, but I
For
will
all
just
three
say,
of you listening,
yeah,
go play Tears of the Kingdom before we next talk about it.
there's a couple of set pieces that feel as epic and amazing as like something from God of War 2018,
Yeah.
right? It's
In
like
an
that
open world
level
game.
in a couple moments in it on a Switch, but still somehow majestic and incredible. Um, this game got me just a little choked up, which is very rare for me in video games. It's rare in general. I like to repress my emotions like any good American man. But this video game, it got me a little choked up at the end. And I think, yeah, the ending boss fight was a lot better. That's the other I think critique you and I both have
Mm-hmm.
about Breath of the Wild
Yeah.
is the last boss fight is kind of anticlimactic, kind of just like
This one was not at all.
discordant, and this one was not. This one, the one thing I will say is the boss fight plays into the three tiers of the world in a way. It just it and one, it's cool because you're in multiple, like there's multiple phases and locations, and it's just visually and mechanically and environmentally interesting. But two, thematically it works, of like the way you explore and descend and
Yeah.
arise and like do all these things. And by the time I
Very
finished,
satisfying final boss fight.
so satisfying, a little challenging, very fun. And then like the final story moments again, yeah, just left me like just a little bit misty eyed and so satisfied at the end of that experience. Like sad it was over. I put, certainly over 100 hours in. I don't know exactly how much I put in. I put a lot of time into it. But I was so satisfied, and like it's bittersweet, but it was just like, wow. I'm sometimes you finish a game and you're like, that was fun, but like I spent a lot of time on that, and like, I'm getting older and whatnot. But with Tears of the Kingdom, I was like, I wouldn't have spent a second of that differently.
No, yeah.
It was
Tears of the
great.
Kingdom is one of those games where you're like, all right, best things I've done. I went to France. I played Tears of the Kingdom. Like
Yeah,
it's just like one
got
of
married.
these. There you go.
Mhm.
It's like one of these life.
Yeah,
It's that good of a game, which is wild that games can be that good. So I,
yeah.
I honestly, legitimately have more to say, but
We'll save it for spoiler
I'll
cast because I
stop.
do
Yeah, we
too.
need to
But
talk more about it.
this episode's getting long and we got more to talk about. But anyway, so glad I played it. It's certainly
So
in my top
6 out of
10 of the
10,
year
7 out
and
of
of all
10.
time. We'll see where it ranks on the list, but
Yeah.
probably pretty
Can
high.
Tears of the Kingdom be your all-time favorite game forever and always? Make your top 10 in 2024.
I don't want to reveal, but we'll
Stay tuned to
stay
find
tuned.
out.
Subscribe to find out.
Yeah.
So,
All right, let me get through the last game I played in its entirety was Chants of Sinar. And this is it's a puzzle game. How do I describe this? Do you know about Chants of Sinar, right?
yeah. Yeah.
To those who don't, it is a kind of a 2.5D side-scrolling, exploration puzzle game. Kind of. It's hard to say, but it's based around language, which I think is kind of. I'm sure someone's done it, but it really feels like the first of its kind, at least that I've seen, built around not understanding someone's language and having to use context clues and different things to piece together what certain symbols and words mean so that you can understand what someone's saying or understand signs or complete certain puzzles within the world. And from that standpoint, it felt very innovative and novel. Really enjoyed it. There were a couple criticisms I had puzzle wise. Basically how the puzzles work are that you have this notebook, and as you interact with stuff in the world, pages will get filled in the notebook, and it'll be like a picture of this, a picture of this, and a picture of this, and you have to connect which symbols mean what to the picture. So if you miss interacting with one object or something, you may be missing a page that will not let you like officially fill in what a word means. Which I didn't love the way that was done, because one, it leaves room for you to just miss an object and then you're missing a page, and it kind of can cause problems. And then the other thing is, what I really liked about the beginning of the game is it starts off, there's an ability to go to a symbol in your notebook and pull up a keyboard and type in what you think it means, which is really funny when you think it means something and you can kind of use a more ridiculous word and then you see it pop up in dialogue. I thought that was really cool. But what happens is when these pages actually come into your notebook officially and you match the words correctly, it will change whatever word you put into the official word that it means. And now from then on, sentences will start to make more sense, which I understand why they had to do that, because if you're 2% off or 10% off and that snowballs, sentences could get really weird later on. But I kind of wish they'd have leaned into that a little bit more so. To really make it feel like I understand this language, but kind of in a broken way.
Yeah.
As opposed to what ends up happening is, if you do find the pages, at that point it feels a little plug and play and handholdy. Like then people, anytime you talk to someone, the words just pop up. I feel like there could have been a better middle ground of the puzzle elements there, and allowing a little more room for personalization in understanding the language and deciding what words mean and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you do that. It's tough, and it's not the biggest critique, but that would be it's not a large critique, but it would be my biggest critique of the game. I will say, like, narratively, once you get to the end of it, I thought it was a really cool story, and kind of in the same way that Little Nightmares has a story. This doesn't have an overt story, but the world building pieces together something really cool by the end of it. And I just thought it was a really unique, fun take on puzzle games. I'd really like to see them make a sequel, or other people see this and take inspiration, because I think language is such an interesting puzzle design mechanic that I think has been completely overlooked for a very long time. But just trying to understand something you don't understand is the nature of a puzzle, and that's what foreign languages are. So 10 out of 10 for like taking a very interesting concept and making a very playable game out of it. I think some things could be ironed out to be a little bit better. But I enjoyed it. I thought the art style was very pleasant as well. And I guess that's about it. If you have any questions on it.
Not too much. I mean, like I haven't tried anything from it. It just looks interesting. Like you said, as soon as I heard like a language based puzzle game, I was like, oh, that's cool. And that makes sense. And there's something fun and discoverable about it. And there's something narrative about it too. Like, learning a language to connect with people you certainly could communicate with. Like, that's all cool. And it has kind of like a sci-fi look to it, which is neat. So I'm excited to play it at some point. I picked it up on sale a while ago, and I just haven't gotten around to it. But that's one of those.
It's a great Steam Deck game.
Yeah, and I love my Steam Deck. So it's one of those games that I'll probably get around to in between bigger stuff on my Steam Deck at some point. And I'm glad to hear that it's really good. Like, honestly, for them trying this new concept, like it seems like they did a pretty great job. For
not having like, I don't feel like there's a framework for this type of game.
Yeah,
so for this being what I feel like is the first of it, I feel like they made a pretty good framework for anyone attempting this in the future to kind of iterate on and improve on a couple areas. So
yeah,
that's more than you can say of most pioneering type of games. So I'd give it like an 8.5. Pretty good game. Great on OLED. If you have an OLED anything, I mean, this game really pops in its color and everything. So
I don't do anything not on OLED.
I only do OLED.
Unless my OLED breaks, because I can't afford another one right now.
So. I know, right?
But at the moment,
OLED
I only do things on OLED.
All right, to round this out, since we're done anyways, I played a bit of Mario Party. What's it, Jamboree? Um,
Nice.
had fun with it. It's the first one I've picked up in a while. There were fun times, and there were, you want to kill other people times, like Mario Party always
Yep.
um,
Mario
creates.
Party
I
has
just wish
its
that
imperative.
they would create the Mario Kart 8 of Mario Parties, where you just
Yeah.
have all the maps since forever, and you have all these different rules you can tweak and settings.
Yeah, you have
And for
all
some
the
reason,
stuff, and you
Nintendo,
can tailor it to how the type of
yeah,
game you want to play right now.
Nintendo
And
will
maybe
never
they
give that
release
to
more
us.
content in the future. I know. I wish they would. Maybe eventually
It's
they
so
will. I mean, they
frustrating.
started with Mario Kart, so maybe it'll eventually happen. They're just weird and slow, and
Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe not
And
though.
then the last thing is Pokemon Pocket. Dabbled
Let's
into that. I don't.
let's wait on that because
You want to hang on that?
I have two other things before Pokemon Pocket, and we can just maybe
Oh,
make that
really?
our closing thing. Yeah,
Yeah, go for it.
since we both did Pokemon Pocket. I
I
played.
threw the thing and everything. You ruined my.
I really did, and
No, go ahead.
I kind of enjoy that. Um, I played like 5 hours of Dragon Age: The Veilguard. Um, and so we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but I wanted to give my initial impressions because I do plan to play more. I liked what I played of Veilguard. It didn't blow me away in any way, but it was cool. Like the graphics looked relatively good. It's kind of stylized. Some cool epic fantasy set pieces right from the get go where I'm like, this is cool. The combat was fairly fun. Um, I have a warrior class where you have like you can like throw your shield and do some cool stuff, and it felt a little Marvel esque in like combat, not in like narrative.
Yeah.
Well, maybe a little bit narrative ways. That might become a downfall of it, but the I can see this game becoming annoying over time. But
A little
the
too
combat
quirky.
maybe it feels like it might become that way. I'm
I
not
mean,
far enough
that's what
in.
I've heard. That's the
That's what I've
same
heard
thing.
too. I'm not
Yeah.
far enough in to say that I feel that way yet from my experience, but I also could see it. It's like someone says that, and I'm like, yeah, I could see it going that way. It's cool though. The story's interesting. Some of the characters are interesting. The combat's pretty fun. I'm enjoying like the world design. I love fantasy stuff, and so it's scratching a certain itch, but it's also not like the best thing I've ever played. And I got sidetracked with some other stuff, so I might come back to it eventually. I do want to play more because I would like to have an opinion on because I've heard some very different things. Like I've heard some people really love it despite some issues it has, and then I've heard some people like Skill Up, I think famously at this point was very very down on this game, and I'm just curious where I will end up because some of the critiques that a lot of people seem to have, I think I'm going to have, but I think there's going to be some things that I will enjoy about it. So as I play more, we'll keep you updated in future months because I want to know what do I think about how this game round.
Yeah.
Sometimes when
And the people want to know what to think,
the people
Zach.
want to know. Calvin, your brother, and the one or two other bots that watch this
They
channel
have to know
really
what to
want to
think.
know what I think about this. So we'll see. I'm finding more and more anytime
The
something's
bots.
anytime something's very polarized, I'm like, I want to see how I actually feel. I want to see if I can figure out how I
We
feel
need
about
more
it.
bots.
We'll get them. Don't worry.
We need more
We're
than 2 bots.
we're gonna get them. We're gonna get those
Oh,
bots.
all right. What's the
I'm
next
gonna go
one?
on Fiverr and hire someone to make a bunch of fake accounts. Don't you
Yeah,
worry.
yeah.
So the other thing I started playing and I haven't finished, but I'm still actively playing is Nine Souls. And I'm
Oh,
playing
yeah,
that on
yeah,
my
yeah.
Steam Deck.
Of course.
I'm not going to say much because this will be a January about December game that I talk about because I will
And
be
then
finishing
again,
it.
January when I play it. So, yeah.
Exactly. So we'll talk about this more in the future, but I just wanted to say Nine Souls is awesome. I am like, I don't know, 8 hours to 10 hours in. I've fought, you know, several of the, like, I think there's like nine major bosses, the Nine
Nine
Souls or whatever.
Souls.
And I think I've beaten three of them. So I'm, third of the way in roughly, enough that I have a pretty good impression of what the game is. And the it's so fun. The combat's really good. It has a really fun parry system, a little bit of a rock paper scissors thing with some of your abilities on top of the parry
Yeah.
system, a little bit of its own flavor to it. The narrative is good. Like I'm intrigued by the story. The world building is really interesting. There's some really unique characters that are kind of fun, and I like some of the character dynamics. Like I actually feel like the character and story work is actually doing a lot more for me than I thought. I thought it was just gonna be a cool
I've heard the
Metroidvania
story is
world.
actually pretty good.
It's actually pretty good to the point where I'm like, I'm interested in some of the side characters. I'm like, I want to see what this guy's doing right now. It's pretty good. The
Cool.
exploration is cool. I have a few critique. My biggest critique at the moment is I don't love the way the overworld map zooms in and out of like the pieces. Like I wish the map was a little better, but Everything
Oh, that
else is
sucks. I hate when they get a
I
map
know.
wrong. It's such an easy but important thing to get right.
That's my biggest issue, and you'll be fine. You can totally. It's not like ruining the game or anything, but it's a little annoying.
Hmm.
That being said, everything else is like pretty great. So
I mean, I've heard from many people whose opinions I don't necessarily scoff at that this is like masterpiece level
I think
of a game. Like it's just really excellent at everything it does. Um, Maybe minus exploration. I've heard exploration is maybe not what people expect or think or want or whatever, but
I think that's
trying to keep my
true.
expectations a little bit, you know, lower.
Exploration,
But
yeah,
yeah, I've
exploration
heard
is
great
not
things.
the best. In some ways, it's cool, and in some ways, I don't want to. It's like hard to say it without getting into details, but
Yeah.
I think
All right.
yeah, exploration is maybe not the very best piece of it for sure. Um, but I do think this is like feels like it could be masterpiece level. To the point where I've also played a little Balatro, not November, but I played a little Balatro this past week or two. And while I like Balatro and I think it's impressive in its own right, I kind of felt like for Game of the Year, I'm like, I personally would have rather have seen Nine Souls as the indie game in the Game of the Year contender. And
Yeah.
I'm also kind of shocked that Nine Souls didn't get
Also
any
indie.
representation in the indie categories or anything. I'm
Yeah.
like, this game is certainly good enough that it should have been in the indie categories. I think it maybe should like I like Balatro a lot, but the Nine Souls is really great. So I need to finish it. But short answer is it's really good. You should, if you're interested in Nine Souls at all, it's worth playing. I can tell you that much. And I'm excited to finish it, and we can get into more
Sweet.
details
I'm going to
in
kick
future
off
months.
2025, I think, with Nine Souls probably. So
Nice.
honestly, I'm running out of time, but also I was like, I don't want to enter Nine Souls into my top 10 discussion. It's hard enough as it is right now. Like I just want to be done.
Yeah,
I can't do it.
fair.
So, and then
Well,
we'll end with Pokemon Pocket. I don't have a lot to say. I don't really make a habit of playing phone games as much as I love to waste my time in other ways. I don't like having something in my hand that's constantly wanting me to play with,
same. Yeah.
the phone. I don't like phone games. I don't like the concept, but sucker for Pokemon, love collecting cards. I will say the immediate impressions were great because you're opening packs and you're collecting all these cards that are nostalgic, lots of
It
fun.
feels pretty tactile. Like you can like look
Yeah,
at the different
yeah,
angles of the card and see the holographic like foil.
yeah. It's well made in that way. Once you finish kind of the entry, the stuff that they made to do, like the battles that are the solo battles and stuff. The game is incredibly bare bones at this point.
Yeah.
I know they're coming out with a new thing here soon, but like there's not a lot. You basically, I open it up twice a day to open a pack. Just like going to get my pack of cigarettes. That's all it is with this Pokemon game, and
Yeah.
do a wonder pick, and that's all I do. I don't even do battles pretty much any because there's just no point to do anything else. So
There are
it's
events
kind
where you
of
can
it
get
kind of
certain
cracked me
things,
up that it
but
was nominated for like phone game of the year or whatever, and I'm just like, it's not a game. It's not even a game at this point. It's just a
yeah,
simulation of collecting cards. So,
uh,
but I'm
that's
still
the
here.
one
I'm
thing
still
I kind
doing
of
it.
like. That's the
I
thing I
know.
kind of like about it. I agree with you though. It's way too bare bones. I don't know how long term I'll stick with it, but f like Pokemon cards as a kid were crack. They were so, and this captures enough of that. And it's like I think some of it is just that millennial nostalgia we have of like I want to get some of these cards again. Like I sold my Pokemon cards when I was a teenager and I've regretted it ever since, but I
Mhm.
literally can't afford to try and like buy back some of the cards I had. So it's fun to like have a digital outlet and like collect some of these
Mhm.
cards and play a game here or there. Like there are some events they do where it's like we have a new some new rewards you can get that for the next 2 weeks. Like, you can get some of these custom artwork cards or these like play mats or whatever. And I'll do some of those where it's like you need to like do battles versus other people or do battles like single player battles. And so I'm doing maybe one or two battles a day at the most.
Yeah.
I don't want something that takes a ton of my time, to be honest, so in that way it kind of works, but I wish they would add more to it and make it better. But it also it
More
gives
ways
me a
to
little
like
bit of that
unlock
feeling.
more ways to unlock cards you're missing through like some sort of action rather than just at this point I'm just pulling a pack twice a day, like hoping for the
Hoping.
7 cards I'm missing. It's just kind of like
Yeah,
The other thing that
you
bothers
do get
me.
those pack points that you can use
Yeah,
by,
I know. I need to
but
spend them. I've been hoarding them.
it takes forever though. So
Yeah.
like
I wish
any
that
good mobile game.
exactly. I wish that I could see your cards. We friend
Yeah,
requested and I was like, "Oh, let me go see all the cards Zach has." Nope, can't do that in this
being a
game
friend
cuz
is kind of doesn't really
it
add
doesn't do
anything.
anything. So, and I was like, "Oh, let me go see if he has duplicates of this card I need or eventually they'll add in trading, I'm sure." So this game will probably become something a little more interesting at some point.
Yeah, it'd be cool to be able to see each other's cards and trade, and also battle each other like on command. Like, on
command.
On command. Like I can command Levi, and he has no choice. It's like we have your wife. Open up Pokemon TCPG and play Zach right now.
TCPG,
and she will be unharmed.
So there you go. Pokemon Pocket TCG top 10 game of the year. We'll wait to find out next month.
TGIF. I always get the acronym wrong for this game.
It has way too many letters.
It's too many
in it.
It's too many.
PPTCG. Is that what we call it?
Yep.
So, well, that was a busy month. Look at November. Now it's gone.
Thankfully, December's almost gone too.
I know. But here we are. We've made it to the end of the year just about. We've got one more podcast coming to round out 2024, and then we will have completed an entire 12 months of this month in gaming. So that's an accomplishment. Feel free to celebrate by telling all of your friends and giving us thousands of followers so that we can make money doing this. That would be great.
Yep.
And we'll do it again in 2025.
The best gift is the gift of learning about an amazing podcast. So give that to all your friends and family.
Oh, I thought it was giving us tons of money.
Well, that comes up through you telling all your friends and family.
Kind of symbiotic.
Have to subscribe. Yeah. But
all right. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you very soon here. We're going to do December. We've also got a game of the year discussion we're going to have about all the games that our top 10 games of 2024 and some other stuff coming your way. So stay tuned and we'll catch you guys next time.